As a child, I remember at age 10 already wanting to become a historian. So that's what happened. So I studied history in France, political science, as many middle-class Frenchmen must do. And then I got my research training in Cambridge with Peter Laslett, who was the great specialist on the history of family systems. I started as a head librarian at the Institut National d'Études Démographiques. I left journalism or cultural journalism when I was perhaps 34. But I feel at home at INED because it's the world of statistics, and I use statistics, I'd say, rather heavily. I enjoy reading demographic data, looking for strange or odd figures that leads to discoveries, and INED is well, it's just the right place because all the people there are very different, and that changed a lot. That it's not the same place, the place it used to be. It's the place where people live among statistics, and there's a kind of statistical language. This never was a problem for me. First of all, because I'm also, to be completely honest, what my teacher in France was, still is, Emmanuel Leroy-Ladurie, who was a French leading historian and a friend of the family. Well, I've got to apologize. I was born into the French intellectual establishment. I'm not a self-made man at all. And Leroy-Ladurie is perhaps the best, the greatest representative of the Annales school, l'école des Annales, after people like Braudel and many others. And the thing, so I'm just a modest student or produce at school, and the thing with the Annales school, the great thing was to mix all disciplines and the very different social sciences. I remember interviewing Fernand Braudel for Le Monde, with Braudel explaining to me that what made the Annales school so famous and so successful was that it was the use of other human sciences, sociology, geography, anthropology, and so this is the way I was brought up, or as a historian. So it's just completely natural for me to mix all disciplines. I just don't see the. I'm completely unable to say when I'm sort of crossing a border, moving from a. When you take the peasant societies of the world, before they get into the globalization process, there used to be very different types of family systems. The traditional Western family, well, English or Northern French was a nuclear type, always been a nuclear type, and never was anything else. That's what my teacher Laslett discovered for England. And in other countries like, well, Germany and Japan, you will find what's called the stem family. So it's got the lineage thing with the eldest son inheritance, and a basic principle of inequality between children, a much stronger authority pattern, and so a first sort of a measure of patrilineal bias. Then you will find in Russia, China, or northern India, you will find what I call the community family, but which used to be called the patriarchal family, or in India it's called the joint family. that you've got what you must imagine is an ideal type, which will consist in the father, his married sons, and then equal division of inheritance when the father dies. And there are other types. I could take hours explaining. And the question is are the larger, more compact, more anti-individualistic systems in Eurasia breaking down and converging onto the Western pattern? There are signs. I quoted William Good, who was a major writer on the family. He was the first promoter of the idea of a convergence onto the Western model. And there are, part of this is true, and the book I wrote with Youssef Courbage on the Arab world was very much a book on demographic convergence, with the fall of fertility rates in the Arab world or the whole of the Muslim world, and of course the fall. Birth control supposes some kind of conjugal family emerging somehow. So part of this is true, but this being said, there are many signs that of non-convergence. One of the best examples would be the rise of the sex ratio in China. You see, the sex ratio, it's the proportion, how many male birth to every 100 female birth. The natural human rate is 106 or 107 the most. A country like China, which used to be very heavily patrilineal, male biased, we now have sex ratios perhaps as high as 120. But within the select club of advanced nations, there are huge differences. I mean, the difference between 2 and 1.4 is something that will define different futures for society. Mass immigration in Germany, perhaps leading to different type of society, moderate immigration in France and something else in the US. I'm now halfway through a book on on sort of a social, anthropological interpretation or vision or description of globalization. In a sort of measured way, I'm rather pro-immigration and fusion and adaptation. But on the other hand, the world is in crisis. There's this tremendous rise in inequality. There is a near stop in educational progress in the most advanced world. This started in the US in the 60s, in fact. Perhaps it's the first time when we have, there's still a history and things are going to happen, but there's a feeling, a strange feeling of stagnation in spite of technological progress. And I'm trying to study the underlying family, social, anthropological things that could explain this feeling of slurring, disintegration in a situation where we ought to be efficient and optimistic, and we ought to be producing the most extraordinary society in the history of humankind. Wonderful, but I can't. I enjoy very much the people I met. They're very open-minded, and I'm not completely lucid because I have perhaps have a special pathological relationship to Toulouse. Every time I get to Toulouse, I get into a sort of a natural state of euphoria, of happiness. So I can't tell things apart, you see. Perhaps it's the people there, the institute or whatever it's called, or perhaps it's Toulouse. I'll never know.